Hello. So today I want to talk about the song Through It All, which was written in 1971. That may not seem real historic to anyone at this point because it's not really that old and it was written by Andre Crouch, but there's more history behind it. If we go back to the early gospel music of America, which was really birthed in the African American community as early as the 1800s, there were quartets, um, African American quartets performing gospel music, and the Jubilee Singers were touring to raise money, and so on and so forth. By the 1850s, they were on tour. Um, just to read an excerpt from a book that explains some of the connection of that early African American music and gospel work to Andre Crouch. I thought I'd read this. Later on in this process was formalized the African American University. Jubilee singing groups are examples of this. This concept was pioneered by Fisk University in Nashville because of a need for funds. They once raised $20,000 on an American tour of northern states and then went abroad. Through such a process, a new style emerged. It was the early gospel. They used drums and banjos, eventually adding the piano. Many Pentecostal groups embraced this new style. A blind woman named Arizona Drains inspired a style that came to be known as the gospel beat. She made many records and later served under a pastor named Samuel M. Crouch. Crouch's nephew, Andre, became famous in the contemporary charismatic movement of the 1960s. And Andre Crouch has been called by many the father of modern gospel music. And he has won, let me get this straight, correctly, 7 Grammys, 4 Dove Awards. He's had Oscar nominations for different movies, one of them being The Lion King, and so on and so forth. And he is one of 4 gospel recording artists with a star in Hollywood on the sidewalk. And so the story goes, when he wrote this song Through It All, he had a lot of hardships being an African American performer, and one such hardship was he was headed to a church and they were supposed to put him up in a hotel. When they found out he was black, things changed. He was taken out to a farmer's house who had essentially made a makeshift apartment in the barn. Andre Crouch later in an interview called it a chicken coop. So he was supposed to spend the night in the chicken coop. I recall he called a friend and got out of there and stayed at a friend's house. Another time when he was introduced, many of the people didn't know he was black, and when he was introduced, the 4 rows got up and left the church. So he had some hardships, but the story behind the song itself was that there was one of the gals that was part of the group that he was hoping to marry. He had bought a ring. He was planning on asking her to marry him. She had missed some meetings. She showed up at one point, and before he could say anything, announced to the group that she had fallen in love, was planning to get married, and it wasn't to Andre. And as the story continues, he went home and in that heartache wrote this song Through It All. And he had in his own testimonies had talked about later that song being a real encouragement to him. He lost a mother, father, brother, all in a short period of time, things like that. And so that's just a brief history of this song, which was a big part of the church for a number of years and is still being used today, and many newer groups are using it. So hope you enjoy that. Amen. I've had many tears and sorrows. I've had questions for tomorrow. There have been times I couldn't tell right But in every situation, God gave blessed consolation that my trials come to only make me strong. Through it all, I've learned to trust in Jesus. I've learned to trust in God. Through it all, I've learned to depend upon His word. I've been a lot of places and I've seen a lot of faces, and there's been times I felt so all alone. But in those lonely hours, those precious lonely hours, Jesus lets me know that I'm His own. Through it all, I've learned to trust in Jesus. I've learned to trust in God. Through it all, I've learned to depend upon His word. Well, I thank God for the mountains, and I thank Him for the valleys, and I thank Him for the storms He's brought me through. For if I never had a problem, I would know that God could solve them. I would know what faith in God can do. Through it all, I've learned to trust in Jesus. I've learned to trust in God. Through it all, I've learned to depend upon His word. Through it all, I've learned to trust in Jesus. I've learned to trust in God. Through it all,